you can keep the wisdom, but you don't have to use fear to keep yourself safe. I think that I just see that, especially the last number of weeks, over and over again with clients trying to use fear to make themselves safe, when actually it's the thing that ends up leaving them more vulnerable.
Absolutely. Welcome back to the Mind Change Podcast. I'm your host, Heather McKean. And today joining me again is McKenzie Brewster.
Hi, y'all. Thanks for having me.
McKenzie's one of our wonderful and amazing practitioners, and just such a joy always to have on the podcast. So welcome back.
Thank you.
So today we are addressing a listener or watcher, whichever one you're doing, request. Speaking about, what about mold?
Okay.
What about EMF? What about like multiple chemical sensitivity? What about prescriptions? And so what I think this person is maybe asking is like, yeah, but what about, aren't these things real? Aren't these things negative? Wouldn't these things really affect me? You know, I could heal all my trauma and do all this work, but
what about toxins?
Yeah, what about toxins?
Okay.
Like, aren't toxins real and aren't they bad, and shouldn't we be careful? That's how I'm interpreting it.
Okay, we'll go with that then.
So lovely person who thankfully wrote that in and wanted this covered. If I am misinterpreting that, you're going to get a different podcast episode than you may have been expecting. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, great.
Like many things.
Yes.
I might have a little bit of a different
I think you will have a different take on that than most.
On this. Not that I haven't done this road myself. So I will preface that by saying I also, in my chronic illness journey, which I think this is one of those like, it's like Route 66 of the chronic illness journey.
Yeah.
Like, so where are you have you done the mold, chemical, EMF, like parasite thing yet?
Yep.
Like, where are you on your journey? Have you got there yet? Because I do feel like that is a very, very common stopping off place for most people.
Oh yeah, it was one for me. And when I think about a lot of the people that I've worked with, one of those things ends up not all the time, but often coming into play. When I say like, coming into play, not that is the thing itself, but part of what they've been through, at least as thinking is the cause of everything, or been something that they've addressed for a long time, working to eliminate or change if that's the issue at play.
Yes. So I guess let's break it down. Maybe let's start with mold.
Okay.
Mold is topic du jour right now, I think. It's very, very popular. There are entire practices out there who specialize and niche in mold treatment in people's bodies, like recovering from mold toxicity, mold exposure. And so, yeah, I think let's just kind of talk about that.
Okay.
First of all, mold is real. I'm not saying mold is a made up thing. It's real. Can see it with our eyes. We know that in particular, certain types of mold are no bueno for the human body.
Yeah.
I think that we can all agree on. I think that this is one of those areas, like many, that has become a poster child, or let's say what would be the right
catch-all?
Maybe. Yeah, kind of a like, well, it must be this over time. Because I think just in general, we are in we're in a society, in a world that no matter which society, there's multiple societies, but we're kind of in a collective state of our bodies are responding very loudly.
Yeah.
Very extremely as well. I think because for a long time we have not been listening. I think not to overgeneralize, but that's how I'm going to generalize it.
Okay.
So I do believe that our bodies are speaking up. There's a lot of unprocessed trauma coming from even the way we do masculine and feminine roles, or the way that we've dealt with trauma in the past, or the arc of the way that people parent. I mean, there's so many different things.
So you're saying that collectively as a society, there have been so many things going on and undealt with that are speaking up and through our bodies.
Yes.
That there's a lot of the things that are going on for us mentally, emotionally, physically are manifesting from this like deeper or broader place.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And there's many reasons why, and that's not probably the podcast for it, and I've spoke about it numerous times. The breakdown of the central family, the breakdown of extended family, the way we work, like all of these things are relatively new. And
when you say these things are relatively new, what do you mean?
Oh, we did not used to work sitting in front of a screen for 12 hours a day, or, that we just didn't work like that.
So like how we're functioning relationally, how we're functioning in our work life, almost like that environment.
Absolutely.
There's been a massive shift in. And so it's almost as if we're seeing effects of that playing out for us in our bodies and our mental health.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. And to take mold in along with just general toxins.
Yeah.
We are in a more toxic environment if we're talking about pollutants.
Right,
toxins than ever before. Yet, I believe our bodies were designed to evolve with that process as well. So I do think that we can filter, we can process, we have all of these wonderful organs that are supposed to do that. And it would not really make sense for us to not evolve with that, but we seem to be hitting a brick wall.
Wouldn't that take time?
Well, I think it has taken time. I think that we are seeing more and more and more and more. Now, yes, has the revolutionary or the industrial revolution created more stuff in our air, in our water, in our... Yes.
Right. Because part of like, okay, so you might have seen like flash across my face. I know you read faces very well. When you said that, there was a part of me that had a little bit of resistance to what you were saying, because like, yeah, we're meant to evolve with these things, but as much as we're saying that these things emotionally and relationally might be unnatural, because of how we're operating, like there's a part of me that goes, okay, but then all of the pollutants, all of the ways that we're indoors all the time, that seems unnatural too. So wouldn't that automatically have an effect on us the same way those other things would?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's the like you said, the collective.
Okay.
There's a lot of stuff going on. We're really not in alignment with how we were designed to thrive.
Okay.
I'll just put it that way. But rather than like get some sunshine, don't work as much, really invest in your relationships, our collective trauma as well, and just a lack of safety at a neurobiological nervous system state is our initial dysregulation. And dysregulation then takes a lot of resource from the rest of us, from our energy from our body, organs, all different things. So the fact that we're dealing with such an emotional toxic load is not helping our body to deal with some of the other stuff.
Got it.
So we get maladaptive.
Okay.
And so maladaptive has us looking to drugs, has us looking to quick fixes, has us looking to, vilifying things that have been around for millions of years that have figured out up until now. It's like, this is the problem.
Yeah.
Like mold's been around before us.
Right.
So, and we've been dealing with mold. We can deal with mold, but the fact that we're not doesn't mean that it's not necessarily something that isn't great for us. I really believe that it's coming from the fact that so much of our our internal resources are going to all of this stuff that we're not dealing with emotionally.
Got it. So it's like as if we're looking first to what the environmental issue is. Like this thing, the maladaptation is how we're trying to deal with all of it first, going outside when we would have naturally been able to deal with those things. Like maybe that's not the best thing to encounter for us, but that we're biologically built to be able to handle it to a degree. But so much of our resources that would normally be able to handle that are going to all of these other things, which is making it a greater strain on us.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I'm following you.
So again, I want it to be heard that I am saying that mold exposure, not great.
Right.
Right?
Sure.
Toxic exposure of any sort to a toxin, not great. Right? No drinking poison and being like, woohoo, but I'm evolved, emotionally. And so drink up no. But here's the thing. Animals will almost always avoid a plant that's toxic to their system. Mm-hmm. It's like they almost sense it. Yeah. They can smell it. And if they do happen to get a taste of it, they're very quick to get it out of them.
There's a recognition in their system that this isn't good for me, and they reject it.
The body rejects it.
Okay.
We're actually even more evolved than most animals.
Yeah.
We have that too. We don't listen.
We have the innate ability to be able to pick up on something like that, like an animal would, because we're animals, but we're just so out of tune and out of touch that we're not picking up and heeding.
Yes. So we do get ourselves involved in situations and in environments often that are not, let's just take what we put into our body and call food, that isn't food.
Right.
And so this isn't the podcast to get into all of the details behind that, but we tolerate as human beings in this day and age things going into our body that have no business going into our body. Mm-hmm. But chemicals have been put in that trick us into thinking that these taste good or that we crave them or that they're good for us. So we're being tricked by the chemicals. If we are really, really, really aligned and we are, really optimally working, I believe those things won't taste right. We won't crave them. We won't go after them.
We can detect the synthetic.
Yes.
Okay, so this is different then, right? Because sometimes people come in and I've heard you say, is it really the food, right? Someone will come in like, oh, I have a headache, or, oh, I'm not sleeping great, or, oh, I feel, all this gut health stuff. And and it'll be like, but it's the food. And so sometimes what I've heard is when people come in, there'll be a challenge where like, is it the food? Right? That there's something else going on. So how does that's different than what you're saying right now.
Or is it? Because is it the food?
So part of what let me see if I understand what you're saying. You're not, yes, it's, okay. We are built to be able to pick up on whether something actually is healthy for us or not. Mm-hmm. And if we're really in tune, then there is this inherent wisdom. And there's also the wisdom, like you learn through the experience and we adjust. Mm-hmm. So it's not like the food is doing it to me, mm-hmm. right? But it's if I'm eating something, that's not great for me continuously, is that great for me? No, but it's not so much that itself is the problem, but I'm tuned out from being able to pick on whether or not something is good for me.
Correct. So it's
okay.
And. So it's the food that you're putting into your body isn't helping you thrive. Uh-huh. Is it the cause of the headache or the stomach ache? It's contributing, mm-hmm. but I want to go deeper,
right?
Because maybe then you don't eat that food, but you're going to do another behavior. You're going to get involved in some other thing because it's the reason that you were able to put that food into your mouth in the first place. The reason it didn't encounter multiple signposts of like, nope, I don't think so. Nope. Hey, whoa, is because we're so out of touch. Uh-huh. But we're so out of touch because we've experienced so much pain mm-hmm. that we're trying to dissociate from the pain, and we dissociate from self.
Yeah. And so we're dissociating from all of those natural signals.
Yeah.
Okay. So then would it be safe to make the step that so much of those, the environmental things, why we wouldn't pick up on that being healthy, not healthy, is also like, it's almost like that's a mirror of the emotional, relational environment where we've not been picking up on the signals of what actually is in alignment for us, caring for ourselves, like toxicity kind of in every sort of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. And
I pause with that though, because that's still the way that I said it, to me feels a little bit of like a victim-y, kind of like a it doing to me
right
space still.
Yeah. So I think there's also the reality that the human body can only take so much.
Right.
You know, like you keep dumping not great food, lack of sunshine, lack of healthy relationships. Like what I would say is someone doing this like massive, long, chronic mold toxicity, mold issue, is that they definitely have a massive overload on their system. And it's not just the mold. The mold, which is around us all the time, has been for a long time. There's this whole idea that we're building in a different way, and that's actually creating more mold. But I will there's an argument to be made that back when everything was very damp and we had no other way out of that, there was no central air, there was no way to filter air at all, that would have been a lot worse. Mm-hmm. So I hear that, but it's easy to dismantle from a long-term perspective, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I will say that this is the way that we work, is very often we load, and then something breaks the proverbial, like the straw that breaks the camel's back. Is it the thing?
Right.
So what I would say is there's comorbidities. Mm-hmm. There's predispositions. There's already a toxic load. There's already, and it might not just be environmental. In fact, I would say more than likely it's definitely not just environmental.
Because we're actually fairly resilient. We're made to be able to handle things. Like, we're made to have our immune system be able to overcome and handle these things as they come in. Mere exposure doesn't necessarily automatically mean that we're going to end up ill, or especially chronically so.
Exactly. We have an amazing system. And so many of our organs, their main job is filtration. That's their main job, filtration. Yeah. Get out the bad and keep the good. Mm-hmm. And so if we're having this problem where somehow we are holding on to the bad and not necessarily collecting the amount of good that we should, to me, that's very metaphoric.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with these people, because I think they have very good reason. I had very good reason.
I did too. As we're talking about this, I'm thinking very specifically about exposure to things that I had, where there was a point where it's like, oh, you're sick because you had this. Mm-hmm. But you can look at there have even been studies that have shown the type of people who end up with the illness that I did, or the reaction that I did to a particular substance, like a certain vaccine. And it's like, there was a lot in the load that goes into it first. Why didn't my body just process that through? Mm-hmm. Like, there's a whole load of other stuff that goes there first, where I'm like, was that the best thing for me? Probably not, but it wasn't just that thing. That was on an entire foundation of emotional stuff, other kinds of stress, belief that left me more susceptible to something like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I hear, for the people that are doing this, we both did this to some degree as well. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, there's definitely mold in your environment. There's definitely parasites. I did tons of parasite treatments. There's overload of bacteria, definitely when I was doing all the Lyme stuff. There was like listing through of all the different bacteria and everything, and viruses and stuff that I was holding in my body. Mm-hmm. So it's not that those things are not real.
Right.
But especially when I was starting to extricate myself from the Lyme disease rabbit hole, world, universe.
Yeah.
I started to then finally see the other studies that were like, if we took blood from, you know, 1,000 people across these, you know, particular areas, you would see this in their blood too, and they're asymptomatic.
Right.
So it isn't necessarily and this was the same with my spine. My spine surgeon, it was the one that actually admitted this to me. It was like, we x-ray 100 people's spines. You've got 10 others that look exactly like yours, and they didn't even know anything was wrong. If we do a randomized thing, then there could be someone else whose, you know, impingement was less, who was debilitated and can't even stand.
Yeah.
So there is a factor happening. There's a variable happening in all of these situations, and that variable is each of us.
Yeah.
So this doesn't always equal this in everybody. I mean, if they find something like that in everybody, this equals this, then, you know, in everybody whose white blood cell count is like skyrocketed, there's infection somewhere. That's pretty safe to say. Pretty safe to say that that's a measurable thing. White blood cell count, super high, infection.
Yeah.
Now, what's causing the infection, what your white blood cell count normal is versus someone else's normal versus what they call normal, we can get into all sorts of stuff. But the rest of this stuff is like, you know, there's a lot of variables. Let's just say.
Variables. Okay. So the lot of variables, why is that in a sense good news?
Yeah. Why is that good news? Because it isn't necessarily, a lot of these things become very, very cut and dry. You have been exposed to mold. Mold is the problem. Now your body is full of mold and you need to get it out. And you need to get out of this place, or you got to get out of this thing. And so if there's variables, if I'm a variable, then I get to have a little bit of agency about what this means for me. Because let's just say, okay, so back in the 80s, this was known. It was called SBS.
What's that stand for?
Sick building syndrome.
Okay.
This is when this started coming up. That there was this collection of symptoms showing up in enough people that there became a syndrome about it. And it was that they were getting sick in the building that they were living in. And now, not everybody in the building was getting sick. That's a bit of a different thing. Like, for instance, when there's carbon monoxide poisoning in a building and you've got many, many, many people getting sick.
Right.
So what you have there, that's a like massive exposure to a toxin, and you've got the majority of the population responding to that.
Okay.
So that's a little less of the variable.
Okay, I hear
you.
Right? Yeah.
And so you need to evacuate the whole building. In a lot of these SBS cases, there was one person getting sick. An entire building of other people, but one person was getting sick. And so they were like, okay, mold, right? And listen, guys, I want to just caveat something here. I'm going to just reference a couple of studies. But what I know, having read tons and tons and tons of studies, is pick a narrative and you'll find a study backing it up. So let's be a little bit gracious as far as studies go, because this one's, the reason I say that is the one I'm going to reference is a little bit intense. This says the toxic mold scam was debunked in 2006 in a paper, but that paper was never effectively communicated. Now, the name of this paper was The Medical Effects of Mold Exposure, and it was done in... Let's see. It was, you know, how it's multiple scientists. And it's from AAAA1. I don't even know what that means. But evidently, this was brought up by a doctor, an MD and PhD, who was saying, this is ridiculous that we're still talking about this. It was debunked so long ago. Sort of the way you hear me talk about this whole chemical imbalance thing.
Yes.
Anyone in the medical field, as far as understanding neurobiology of this, knows
mental health.
There is no such thing as a chemical imbalance. That's
like
another,
that being the cause of
depression, anxiety. There's no such thing.
Bipolar.
Even though I had a doctor say, oh, we tested your blood and you have a chemical imbalance and this is why you're going on this medication.
Yeah.
This particular SSRI doesn't exist.
Right.
Papers are completely, absolutely 100% in agreement. And yet it perpetuates, even amongst doctors, even amongst,
It's like leftover information.
It's leftover information. It's like, this is information coming from our live events. I do a whole thing about what if it's not true, things that we think are true that are proven to be not true. One of them is that the Great Wall of China is one of the few man-made structures that can be observed by space, through space. And many, many, many people believe that, but it's not true.
Right.
Absolutely untrue. Completely debunked, but you can still find it in textbooks. So it's one of those things, like this information gets out there. So according to all these people and these scientists, there is literally no such thing as toxic mold, like syndrome exposure, that it can be something that people get and have long-term or chronically, or, even this whole black mold thing, which we're all like, oh, black mold, scary. It's so incredibly rare that someone gets like irreversible damage from black mold exposure.
Okay, so then can I back you up a little bit to talk about, because you've worked with a lot of people who have come through with this is the thing, this is the cause, this is why I have it. What have you, in specializing as you do in the emotional drivers from lots of research, what have you found are some of the emotional drivers that go along with that? Like, what is it then that's going on with people where this is the tipping point?
Yeah, this helps us narrow down the variable a little bit. And say if this is kind of your history, that you're almost more prone. This is almost like a comorbidity. This is almost like a, something that is a precursor to, it's like a genetic disposition, right? So this is a predisposition to these sorts of things. And that is feeling unsafe in childhood and that you were unable to have agency to protect yourself.
Okay.
I know that like cast quite a wide net. I know.
Like to me, that feels like that's almost the base of most things.
Right. But it's like that. It's like the thing, like we all of us have been exposed to mold. All of us. And EMFs and pollutants.
Right.
And weird things in our food and everything like that. All of us have.
Yeah.
And yet most of us will never feel the effects of that negatively, adversely. Or if we do, we just drink more water, sleep a little bit more. We support our body to do what it needs to do without even realizing what the problem was. So this is this subset of people that under these conditions, now I would put you and I in this category, considering what we did.
Yeah.
Right. And we have very different backgrounds.
We really do.
Extremely different.
There are some, I think I helped you get one of your diagnoses at one point.
You did, yes. It's like, oh, maybe that's what I have.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, yes.
Then you did.
So it's more of what the child believes about themselves and what that means. So it's very frequent that, not always, but frequent that it's the older child. So there's an over responsibility. They feel the need to somehow protect a parent or be a parental figure at a very young age. So they're taking on, so already we're talking about toxic load right there.
Yeah.
Children are not meant to take adult worries, thoughts, behaviors on. They're not ever meant to be a parent's confidant or to be, that's almost, that right there. You're worried about mold. I'm worried about that.
Yep.
Right. That is toxic to our system as a child. That is an overload. Or if you were, or if there was something unsafe, it could have been a relationship. It could have been a person. It could have been a system. Like, maybe you can share what you've identified as yours. Yeah. I know mine. I had an abusive stepfather. Physically abusive, but that's not where it started. It was very unsafe. Yeah. Like, I'm not sure people in my family knew what safe was. So it was unsafe, 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 unsafe to higher degrees of unsafe. And then obviously there was sexual, molestation and stuff like that. That not having the agency, physicality of being able to get away from something that you were exposed to is the body is like, it puts you in almost like a paralysis.
I identified that a little bit more with my religious upbringing. I mean, there were definitely pieces of dynamics of my family of, I think, emotional caretaking, the confidant thing. We've had to work through aspects of triangulation, of, talking to one person about the other, through time. But, the idea that the environment around you is not safe and could contaminate you, like it's not safe, came through a lot of the religious understanding that I had, right? There was like it was a Christian tradition where the idea of sin, and you can't be around quote unquote sin, and being around that and other people can affect you, and that you're to a degree powerless instead of, right. So there are spaces where I operated in and a lot of the terminology too of the world, saying things like, okay, well, here's this, our subculture, and it's in contrast to the world. And so really when they're talking about things culturally, the catchphrase of using things, the world, well, I took that to mean the actual world, the real world. And internally it was am I safe in the world? The world is unsafe for me, can negatively affect me, and I don't really have power over that.
Yes. Something's out to get you.
Something's out to get you.
Around, and you
can't always avoid it. No.
And you can't always see it.
No.
And you don't know. It might be a wolf in sheep's clothing. It might be something you think is safe and it bites you.
Oh, yeah. Something you think it's safe. You don't even realize. You think you're fine, but actually there's something.
Yes.
Yeah, that was totally part of my internal way of operating.
And what we do as humans, which can not feel pleasant at the time, but once you know that this is what's happened, is we will metaphorically keep repeating that pattern on the outside of us.
Yeah.
So this is a basis behind, and there's other things too. So that was my experience. That's your experience. Now, we both had siblings. Same environment. Really different ways, my guess is.
Yeah.
Really different ways of handling this. My brother never has done mold, multiple chemical sensitivity disorders. He never did parasite things. He didn't really do chronic illness, actually. He does a lot of other things. He does other fun things that are representing similar messages, but he did it different than I did.
Yeah.
And he perceives it very different than I did.
Yes.
So the perception of how we were raised in our home environment is very different. And so the way we do it, the way we manifest it metaphorically is very different.
The way you cope with it is different.
Yes, absolutely. So that was your experience. Then there was my experience. Another possible contributing factor could be maybe you had a parental figure who was smothering or also a worrier. Like a complete worrier. And you could get hurt here. Oh, you get hurt there. Or, that kind of type of mothering. Or fathering, absolutely. And that then sets you to a little bit of a hypervigilance where you look for danger or you look for possible things that could come out and get you.
Can you talk a little bit about how that affects you neurobiologically?
Absolutely. Reticular activating system. So our reticular activating system is that little bundle of nerves. And what it does is it acts as a filtration system. We have so many. This acts as a way of filtering out relevant information and releasing the rest. What is deemed relevant information? Anything that gets a little bit of a kick in our, a kick up from our production of neurotransmitters.
Okay.
Right? So, or what I like to call flags. So if something is negative, and it tends to flag more negative things because we get a pretty big kick, like a kick of adrenaline, right? Or a kick of norepinephrine or something.
Which is meant to like set our nervous system. If there is something in the environment in danger, our body is rising up with energy to be able to meet this thing.
Yes.
To be able to handle it and then return to its baseline.
Yes.
But if we spend more time there and we get so used to it that it starts to clock as being more familiar and more safe, essentially, even though it isn't. And so there's almost like an addiction to being in that state. And so then we're chronically priming ourselves up for that. So we tend to be more attuned to noticing the things in the environment. And when I say environment, it's like any kind of environment, interpersonally, in the actual like physical environment, sensations within ourselves. It's like we're heightened to pick up on them more. And then it's like it just kind of creates a little bit of a loop with the reticular activating system?
Yes. So we're heightened to be looking for, but then we also get desensitized to it.
Right.
So then it's hard for our body and our mind to what is dangerous and what is going to get me versus what's not going to get me. And we get a little bit out of sorts with that. Mm-hmm. And so the reticular activating system is looking for, you will hear, if this is the way that you are set, you'll be at lunch and there could be 50 conversations happening around you at other tables. If someone's talking about something danger, mold and da-da-da-da-da, you will pick up on that. Uh-huh. And this is why they said they're doing this symptom and that symptom and this symptom. You'll be like, wait, what? Mm-hmm. And you'll tune into that. Where this person over here might be talking about the most amazing things and this is the way that they are supporting their thriving health. You're going to pick up on the symptom talk.
It's almost like when they've done things where it shows that people are hear their name or more likely to interpret things that are closer to their name as their name because they know it so well. It's like it's trained into them. Mm-hmm. Okay. So
then another little nuance of, let's say, these type of people, a predisposition, are people who are very interested in like fixing this and doing this, and they may be researchers, which, this was me and I'm so sorry. Because then you're looking for it all the time and you want to find out more about it. And so you then pick up all of the information.
Because you're looking for what's wrong.
Yes.
Like what could be a danger to protect yourself from it.
Mm-hmm. And then you find all kinds of things to be scared about. Uh-huh. All kinds of things. And then you find the right doctors who are like, this is the number one health problem in the entire universe. This is it. It's mold, or it's parasites, or it's Lyme, or it's EMFs, right? So, and these are very similar. This, from my experience, mold, EMF, multiple chemical sensitivity, this is a very similar dynamic. Some of the drivers might be a little bit different depending on which one you might be more heightened to. But what I've seen is this, and parasites gets in there too. This typically, people go through the gamut. They'll run through the gamut. And the reason behind this is, let's say that they'll go to find support for this, or they'll go to a support group, or they'll find an online thing, or they'll find a functional medicine doctor. Nothing against functional medicine doctors. I think to some degree they're looking more for root causes than our traditional healthcare tends to. But what happens is then they get put on some sort of protocol. And some people, and this happens this is not just with mold, Lyme, EMF people. This is with all sorts of people who do this. Yeah. Right? All of us, illness, chronic illness, or even people who chase after habits and performance and this kind of thing. You start it for a little while and you start to feel better. Mm-hmm. And then you just get hooked into this thing. And then it doesn't work as well. And now we have to change. It's because of this. And we have to change this. We have to add this. We have to do this. And it's this constant dance. And what this is of like, I feel a little better, but now I'm feeling this. And now this is added. What's happening is that care, that love, that stability, that agency that we were seeking as children, we're doing it now. We're just doing it outside of us. With medicines and with things, and you're the thing I need. No, you're the thing I need. No, you're the thing I need.
So it's less about, so someone will start a protocol, get some level of relief or change, and they love that. But then after a while, it only goes so far. And so they're trying to figure out, okay, so what is it actually more that I need to do, kind of essentially more of the same. But you're saying, if I'm getting this right, that it's less about the protocol itself, it's more that they did something for themselves.
Yes.
That they were able to take action and do something to help. And so that brought a sense of healing, that brought some relief. But because that didn't get to what was driving it underneath, the body still keeps sending the message because it wants to make sure that you get it in the deepest way, that you get the fullest and most amount of care.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's part of why, like, I love coming back to that, because it's funny. I worked with someone today who had been referred to me from a functional medical practitioner. And they've been doing a protocol for at least a year. And they had a moment of, being discouraged of like, but I'm doing everything and it's not working. And like, that temptation of going like, what's wrong with me? There's something wrong. And we were talking about, no, what if actually all of that is because there's something right? And it's not that there's something wrong with you, that this doesn't work, right? But that there's a deeper need that you have. And so your body just keeps speaking up louder. And if you just try to get rid of the symptomology without answering what it is that you truly need, that's not going to cut it for you. Like, you care about yourself so deeply, so much that that's what needs to be met. That's what needs to be addressed. You see how in that ultimately your body was so for you. And they'd come because they'd started to recognize, there are these things that I've been through. There are these traumas. There's these beliefs that haven't really been addressed. And so in getting to do that, it was just like a much bigger, much fuller picture, because they've done all the things, they've done all the protocols, and they're like, I don't really feel like I'm all that much better. Sometimes people even get worse. No, some people do get better, but there's, again, layers to it. So we're like, okay, so then what is it? What's the deeper thing that you need? And how, essentially, in all of this, like, you've been advocating for yourself. You didn't realize it, but you're advocating for yourself. So now that you're answering the call, like, let's get in there and give you what it is that you most needed in the place that you needed it, in your mind, in your past.
Absolutely. Because what will happen is if we don't meet that need at its most basic level, it's going to find another avenue.
Right.
So I have an acquaintance on Facebook, right? That, it's funny, like, whose feeds when I'm on there shows up. I'm like, we don't even have that much history. But regardless, we met early on in my journey to, for wellness and everything like that, when I was trying out a few things. She was in that same community. But over the years, somehow, like, her thing just keeps kind of showing up. So this is one of those things that happened. So coming in for chronic illness, and then there was this like, okay, now I'm a little better with chronic illness, and so I'm going to start helping other people. And then
they came into what for chronic illness?
This is an EFT thing. When we were doing EFT.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And it was like, okay, now I feel a little better, and I'm going to start helping other people with this particular, this happens a lot. I feel a little better. Now I'm going to start doing this for other people.
Yeah.
But the root hasn't yet been met.
Uh-huh.
And so then following up, they have to completely move out of their house. They have to move out of, there's like many children, and they have to move out of this house, move to a completely different state because mold in the house. It's like this whole thing. I think it was a year or two later, fiberglass moved houses, moved whole things. It was all this drama, everything like this. And then there was fiberglass exposure from their mattresses. And there was like, everyone was contaminated with fiberglass, and they had all of these things happening. And then I was like, oh my goodness. And then again, so then they have to get rid of everything they own. And, I don't know if they moved again or something like that. But then it was like, then you just see the systematic decline of her body.
Yeah.
Now it's this surgery, and it's that surgery, and it's this condition, and it's that condition. And then it's now I can't do this anymore, and I can't do this anymore. I'm still helping people, and it's like, oh, there's clearly like, and this is the trajectory. If we don't meet that need, and we keep half synthetically giving it a little bit of a thing here and a little bit of a thing, that's the same thing we got as children.
What do you mean synthetically giving it a thing here?
We give it a little bit of a kick, like a little bit of a dopamine hit, right? You're giving it a little bit of attention. Or I think in this particular person's case, there was neglect in the home.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. I think there was probably severe neglect. I think there's some patterns I see in this person's life that from all the people I've worked with, I would be asking those questions.
Yeah.
I think when these things happen, people rally. And there's a lot of support. And she's not having to ask for the support for her necessarily. It's this really horrible thing that happened to them. And it's the government and the this and the that doing this. And so there's still a person who should be taking care of us who's not. And in fact, they're hurting us more than they're helping us. And
that usually has an earlier root.
Yes.
It's like a bit of a blueprint we learn.
It's a wound. It's an attachment wound. It's a very primary, foundational wound. And many of us have them. And it's going to be the basis of a lot of the things that we do.
Yeah.
Getting in and reworking those and making peace there, like actual peace on a gut level, a heart level, a body level, a nervous system level, and a mind level. Then we start to see different things.
Yeah.
And the beauty of that is, we were just talking about this, I think, today, and we have our apprentice group that meets, and I think someone was talking about this today, about the fact that we get to keep the wisdom.
Oh, yes.
Which is really great because, okay, mold, if you told me that, we're going to go sit and do sessions all day in this office, it definitely has mold. You can see it on the walls and everything like that. But you know what? We do mind change, so we're going to be okay. No.
Hard no.
Hard no.
Yeah.
I'm not going. In fact, I can usually walk in and smell a place. I don't care if there's mold. I don't like the way mildew smells.
Yeah.
I don't like the way it smells. I don't want to be there. If I have agency, which I generally do, I'm not going to be there. Now, am I afraid? I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm not like, if the world was ending and I had to sit in that building for safety, you better believe I'd be in that building and I wouldn't be worried about the mold. Like, I just wouldn't be worried about it.
Right. This is something so funny because it came up. I was working with someone recently, and the idea that they didn't have to worry to keep themselves safe. They didn't have to think through everything for themselves to be safe. Like, we just talked about that consciously, and they were like, pause. I didn't know that. And I was like, oh, well, I thought we were going to have to address this from more like a felt sense. But even that as a construct was for that. They thought the worry was keeping them safe. That way they're attuned to everything. That way they can make sure everything is all right in their environment. That way they're on the lookout for everything. And learning instead that when you act within that level of fear, when you put yourself in that level of fear, you're actually less attuned to pick up on the subtle signals to be safe, but you can keep the wisdom, like you're saying, right? You're like, okay, I can tell from the smell of mildew. Like, you're picking up on the earlier signal, you're attuned in that way, and then you just decide, oh no, I don't want that. And then that you can keep the wisdom, but you don't have to use fear to keep yourself safe. I think that I just see that, especially the last number of weeks, over and over again with clients trying to use fear to make themselves safe, when actually it's the thing that ends up leaving them more vulnerable.
Absolutely. It's so easy to think about a house, a home, and getting an alarm system because you may be afraid of intruders.
Yeah.
But keeping the alarm system on all the time at a high level, that's actually going to make a really easy way for them. They can break the glass.
Right.
They can pick a lock. You're never going to hear it. You're never going to hear it because that blaring alarm sound is constant. And what people don't understand is it wears out that system. It's meant to be used quick, quick response, quick resolve, and then move on, very regulated. If you are hitting it, or keeping it at a high level all the time, it gets worn out.
And that taxes your system
so badly.
So if we're talking about the load, that's something that is innately within your agency, innately within your control. We just haven't known that and been taught that, but we can learn that. That's what we do. And that diminishes the load so that you would be, if there was something, you would be able to handle it in a, more efficient, effective way.
Yeah. Okay. You and I walk into that building that we were talking about.
Which building?
The mold-filled building.
Okay. All right.
Obvious mold. Covered in EMFs. They're like everywhere.
Right.
And what else do we add? Chemicals, fragrances, like perfumes, whatever else people think are evil. Laundry detergent. I'm trying to think of all the evil things people have had over the years. It's filled with it.
Yeah.
You and I walk in. I've been running myself ragged. I'm worried about everybody all the time. I'm, burning the candle at both ends for various reasons. I'm constantly like, I've got to perform, but then these people want me to be a certain way, and these people want me to be a certain way, and I'm doing this all the time. Like, you can already feel it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like a little, like, I just don't listen to my body at all. So I know that things aren't right, but I'm not thinking it might just be because I need a nap or right. And you're like, you got up, you got some morning sunshine, you stretched your body, you talked to a friend, you came on, and that's just sort of your gig.
Even as you were listing all of those things, I noticed just the slightest rise within myself. And I noticed I automatically took a breath in and I dropped in a little bit further to a more calm state.
Yes, good job.
Right? I've trained that.
Yes. Both of us walk into the building.
Yeah.
This building smells weird. I might just be like, busy, 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 busy. Okay, what do we got to set up? What do we got to do? What do we do? The thing.
Yeah.
We both may sit in there for hours. We both may be breathing in the same amount of spores, let's say. Because of my system, might get this mold. I might start rocking a hardcore headache. I might, I might get massive brain fog. So let's say we both spent 8 hours in that building and we went home. I'm just going to unravel. I'm going to have like system overload. I'm going to have all these symptoms. You may have a bit of a headache, or you may feel dirty. Something's
a little off.
Something's a little off. I might just start to come apart at the seams. You're going to, because this is your way of being, your worth, your value, if I'm not feeling right, I don't have to figure out why. I'm going to trust it.
Right.
And I'm going to listen to my body. What do you need? I really need to drink a lot of water. And in fact, I'm craving water with lemon, or I'm craving salt, or, maybe you even know I'm craving chocolate. Well, I know that might mean I need a little bit of magnesium.
So I'll get some walnuts.
You might just go to your pantry and find detoxers naturally without even, neither one of us knew there was mold in that building.
That's what animals do.
Absolutely.
Like, I've seen my dog when they'd get sick and something's a little bit off, they find the right kind of grass and they eat it and they purge if they need to. Like, animals know inherently what it is that they need to be able to care for themselves.
They don't have a prefrontal cortex.
No.
That's, I think, what gets us in trouble, actually, very often.
But it's funny, even as you're saying this, I can clock experiences I've had where I did innately know. Like, when it stopped being because it's this, right? When I let go of all of that narrative, sometimes I find like, oh, yeah, I just need to sleep a little bit. Okay, I did that. And there have been times where after the fact, I found that there were certain foods that I was craving or that I just naturally started to eat or go along with. And then afterwards found out about that there was some sort of property in it that was particularly helpful for maybe a little bit of a virus that I might have been exposed to, or something that had been off in my system. And I was like, oh, I just kind of knew okay, all right. So that does happen.
It absolutely happens. I was just talking to a friend the other day. She was recounting her husband had been in the hospital. Her husband has a lot of, this is known, he has a lot of trauma from his time in the military. Doesn't want to That's fine. They're like,
Yeah.
doesn't want to address it. You know, that's okay. Not like, do you want to address this? No, just isn't there at that point.
Yeah.
Where she's done a good amount of work and everything like that. I said, oh, really? What was he in the hospital for? Food poisoning. She said, the interesting thing was we had gotten sushi. We had brought it home. We got it out to eat the next day. She's like, I took one bite, didn't taste off, but I just had this innate sense I needed to get it out of my mouth. It was fine the day before. The taste of it. She's like, there was nothing I could tell that was off with it. She's like, I just didn't want it, like really didn't want it. And so took it out of my mouth, even rinsed my mouth out, and just went about my day, ate something different. The husband, on the other hand, finished off all the leftovers and ended up with food poisoning. And so I think that's just one of those things that she, through work she's done, she's just a little bit more in touch with her body.
Yeah.
She wasn't thinking anything.
Right. But the natural security system of the body kicks in.
Yes.
And when you're able to trust that,
yes,
you can just trust
safety,
its wisdom. Yeah.
Stability is our best defense.
It is. And I think what I appreciate about that and what we do is that we can access that. That's not dependent on something environmentally. Like even as simple as the safe haven exercise. Again, a client the other week, and it was a little bit challenging for them. We parked on them being able to do their safe haven, nothing coming in, nothing just suddenly being there. Like, no, this is sacred space. You protect it. You have sovereignty and agency over this. And then it got stronger and it got stronger. And actually they shared that the next day their husband was like, hey, what's that thing you're doing? Like, I really like being around you after you've done that. 'Cause automatically noticed a difference in their manner. And in doing so, the sense of safety that they had within themselves, that it wasn't everything in my environment has to be, they got to create that internally. They could practice it. They can strengthen it. They're coming back into that state of regulation and training it in themselves. So now they're secure because it's theirs.
Absolutely. And it goes back to the keeping the wisdom, but not having to be on hypervigilant alert about it all the time. So I use this example. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this here before. I was diagnosed with celiac disease 20 years ago. 23 years ago now. Doesn't really matter. And so, oh my heavens. Because for me, that was one of the answers, even though it wasn't an answer. I completely avoided gluten. And yet I would get contaminated like all the time. No matter how careful I was. And I was really, really vigilant.
Yeah.
And would get contaminated. And I had this, oh my gosh, I read this pamphlet one time, and it was, it had this visual of a bowl full of nails, a cereal box of like wheat flakes, right? Yeah. And then pouring, and what was coming out of it was a cereal box full of nails. And I think the tagline of this was, so many parts per million exposure is like eating this for breakfast or something like that. It shreds your intestines and takes a month for them to even begin to heal. This was the narrative, right? And I was like, gluten's scary bad, right? And I was, yes, very strong about gluten. So then I do all of this work. And I'm like, and I really come face to face with myself about this whole diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, do I want to get rid of celiac disease? I believe it can be, it's one of those genetic things that a traumatic event turns it on. My belief about that is if it can be turned on, it can be turned off.
Which has been fun I've gotten to watch your journey specifically around celiac through the years and hear the different points of the narrative along the way. So it's been, and to see, because you were the first person I knew who had it, who did it, and then, everybody. And I've gotten to see how you used to do it. I got to see a point where you decided how you want to handle it at different spots, and then what it's like today, and also the contrast from a lot of other people around where there is a high level of motivation of fear. But I remember when it was a point of curiosity and of experimentation for you of, okay, so if this can be turned on by trauma, can I turn it off then? And then But then there being the step of, do I want to?
Yes.
Which seems like an even further progression. Not a I have to, not a I need to. But what do I want to do in my system?
And I sat with that for a while because I was like, I know I can stop this.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what is this that I want to stop? And I wanted to stop the fear and the hypervigilance and the vilification of food.
Mm-hmm.
This is, a journey for me. But I had no interest in eating gluten because I think that it is one of those things. I feel this way about corn as well.
Mm-hmm.
Non-GMO corn is a bit of a different story for me, but genetically modified corn, Monsanto, listen, there's Roundup in those things. That's not good for your tummy. It's just not good. Mm-hmm. It's not good for your tummy long term.
Yeah.
It makes bugs eat out of themselves. Like their tummy gets demolished and that's how they die.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. That doesn't sound like something I want in my plate. So I had to kind of sit with that. And I know like that there's a whole story about the way wheat is grown now and everything. And I'm like, I felt that thing of, I wanted ease. And gluten is the way that the proteins are around them. They're very difficult to digest in the way that they do them now, the way they grow them now. I don't feel like we grow food with love and nurturing. We don't give the soil what it needs. And therefore, how can it give to us in a healthy way? So I was like, I don't really feel the need. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything.
Yeah.
I don't feel like the need to eat this, but I don't want to do it out of fear. And so I worked on all of that. And lo and behold, I haven't been contaminated since, though I have. Multiple times I know, found out later, something had gluten in it and I ate it. And I'm like, and look at my wonderful body doing its job. Like it can break it down. It can do it. It can do all those things. It's amazing. But do I want to be putting things on it and asking it to do that all the time? No, my whole way of eating has changed.
Yeah.
In so many ways. It's been a massive evolution of friending food and being friends with food so that I can, it's for me, it's for my body. But it had to come out of worth and value first.
Here's what I love about that too, because again, we're talking about the idea of contaminants, the changes in the environment, the environmental load. And you're like, hey, I don't feel like this is so great for me. I don't want to do that. And so you're like, that's part of the wisdom, but you're not. And so you choose not to engage with it. You let a certain level of reaction happen in your body if you were to, but it's at a much, the margin is a lot. Oh gosh, I just lost the words. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I think it's like no, I don't have the word.
It takes more for there to be a high level of reaction.
Yes.
It's like your tolerance is much higher.
Tolerance, that's the word.
It's tolerance. You have a much higher tolerance, but that doesn't mean that you want to encounter it and purposefully take it in. So there is this level of, okay, yeah, something environmentally, oh, I don't really like that. I don't want to, but there's no fear. It's all just choice.
Yes.
Even in how your body reacts, and there's actually appreciation for the level of response your body has.
Yeah.
But you don't need it to be so high and even get to the level of alert for you to know and choose how you're going to navigate.
There's almost no alert.
Right.
Unless there's an alert. Right?
Right.
I trust my body. If I've put something in my body that is not right for me at the time, and that's the other thing, is we're constantly, I trust that my body's doing something I don't even need to know about.
Right.
Which is, that has come with building of trust in other areas, working through things, working through authority figures or caregivers being like safe, doing the best, like really looking out for, without me having to look out for them so that they'll look out for me.
Yeah.
So that was really manifesting in a way. So if my body is looking out for me, it's doing its job. It's far wiser, unobserved, than if I'm looking over its shoulder. I don't like to be micromanaged. My guess is my body doesn't either.
So it's, again, the same emotional environment dynamic that you had learned initially of, I have to watch over every single thing and make sure everything is okay so that you can take care of me. you then had that same relationship with your body.
Absolutely.
With your subconscious, with its signals. And so it's like, I consciously have to do all this, and this, so that you can do your job to take care of me.
And it was looking for what was wrong.
Looking for what was wrong.
Right? So if I could assess in my parents or, whomever was around at the time, adults who were most of them were in active addiction of some sort. So what you're looking for as a small child is what could go wrong. Because if I can try to get ahead of what could go wrong, then I can be safe.
Right.
Then I can be cared for. But see, that's still me just doing it. When at that age, you should have a primary caregiver who you can just, when you're little, you need to not think about anything like that.
Right.
You learn agency and you learn cause and effect over time. But overall, you should feel safe to be like, someone's looking out for me.
Yeah.
If I'm about to do something really crazy or dangerous, someone's going to tell me.
Yeah.
You almost need that. You absolutely need that.
Yeah.
So that's what was manifesting for me. I was constantly looking for what could be wrong with my body. As we've talked about before, I was a massive body checker. So I kept thinking, if I can catch the symptom, catch the thing, then it won't become a big thing. Right. But then I was creating big things. Why is my heart doing that? Why is my temperature doing that? Why is my stomach? Why every part of my body doing something dysfunctional? And then I was catering to dysfunction, catering to pain, catering to illness, catering to that stuff, focused on only that stuff. And whatever you focus on, you get more of.
Right.
And so it was just coming and coming and coming. So it's been a whole shift. It's really a mindset thing.
Yeah.
And that's what Mind Change is about, is really kind of operating from a different perspective, but understanding why we were in the program and the perspective we were before without judging it, criticizing it, vilifying it, but letting it inform us of the areas that we need to rewire and change and become more aligned in. So it's really the same. Someone out there is like, yeah, but what about EMFs? Listen, and I know EMFs are new, right? They're new in one sense.
Sure.
But listen, bad juju and negative energy is not a new thing. Yeah. It isn't a new thing. And this is where I believe we really do need to get back to nature more. We need to do more grounding. Like, these are not woo-woo things. They're woo-woo if you make it be the thing that is going to heal you and make you okay. It's not, I don't do these things. I love to ground. I like to stretch. I like to meditate. I like to do positive affirmations. I like to breathe, I like to feed myself nourishing food. I like to exercise. I do those things to support this amazing body that is carrying me on this part of the journey. I do it to support that.
Yeah.
I don't do it because I'm malfunctioning in some way, and therefore this is the thing I'm going to do to stop the malfunction.
Which could read as support, right? And that's the underlying piece of most problems, is I don't think that I can just have it, so I create or come into circumstances to justify it so that I have to have it.
Yes.
As opposed to, no, I just can.
I can just choose it.
I can just choose it.
And I still, again, not there.
Right.
Don't know that that's an actual thing here, but I mean, there's definitely leveling up for sure.
Yeah.
But I still go into my old stuff very frequently, but not old stuff. My old stuff now are working to avoid situations, or, not telling my body I'm going to get to it and then not getting to it, my body is like, oh, really? We're doing this again? Well, how about this? And I'm like, oh, okay, fine. So it's a quicker conversation.
Yeah.
But, I think that's the difference. But I do remember enough of that desperation. Yeah, but my body is malfunctioning or doing these things. It is, and it's real.
Right.
Listen, we make these things, we have so much power. And so mold can be very negative for your system, especially if you make it very negative for your system.
Yeah.
And it's really scary and it's everywhere and it's going to get you. It will.
Right.
Good job. Like it will. You are powerful and it's going to get you. And you may suffer for it. And the EMFs may be getting you. And those smells might be getting you. I believe that they're getting you. The way out of that, though, might be deeper than it is. But I'm going to say might just to give you that little bit of space to get into the thing that's causing the hypervigilance in the first place.
Right.
Because you can keep shifting and you can keep doing treatments and you can keep giving to yourself in that way. But it helps often for a little bit. But it's going to come out again. It's going to come out again in some way, shape, or form. And it may switch tactics and show up in your relationships, or, if you just refuse to listen to your body, it might show up in other areas. But it's going to show up. And so I've worked with so many people, multiple chemical sensitivity disorders, mold exposure, like chronic mold, chronic Lyme, chronic, various things, right? These many, 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 many people like this who've been through the gamut of treatments and doctors and procedures and tinctures and blah, 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 protocols. And with these people can get not just well from this thing, but it can completely change the way that they interact with life in general, all aspects of life. And that needs to happen. So this definitely can be an answer.
This being
mind change, we call it mind change, but it's a look in.
Yeah.
It's not like I didn't make up how to work the body.
Right.
I didn't do that. It's not mine. I just helped with a lot of other tools figure out some of the ways in.
Yeah.
These are shortcuts in oftentimes, and ways of like using the way that our body already and our mind naturally has the ability to do these things. It's just giving people insight into that.
Right.
So again, we call it the mind change method because we got to call it something other than the way we're supposed to work. So we call it that because it gives people a place to come and ways to find out the information. But that's what I'm talking about. Using mind change tools, techniques, the mindset, the belief systems, getting in. And you may not know that it's there. And oftentimes you don't. It's not like you're going to be like, oh, I totally get that this is why I'm doing this. Because that level of protection has dissociated you so far from you. In an effort to protect you, you've layered between you and you. And so it's just coming back to that and understanding why the layers are there, that it was there for a good reason. But underneath of that is little you who still needs the protection and can still get it now.
Yeah.
And we can align back peace, safety, stability, all those good things. And many people have. So I hope that answers your question out there, lovely person who put that in. Again, I want it to be, I do like EMFs, mold, chemicals, toxins, it's amazing how many people will put pharmaceuticals in their mouth, which is so much more toxic than the things, these are man-made, mind-altering, body-altering, chemistry-altering things we don't question. And yet, scary mold in our building. Again, mold is not wonderful, but this is something you are putting in that's going to cause all kinds of more issues because you're doing it to you when you do it that way. Even if, and I know that we sell out to authorities and everything like that, and I get that, and we want help, and there are many wonderful, beautiful hearted people out there with lots of education that are trying to help people.
Yeah.
So again, not a complete demonizing of the medical establishment as a whole, but it's just to get us to think a little bit.
Yeah.
That we're so afraid of toxins, and yet ingest lots of pharmaceuticals without questioning. And I would argue that's far more toxic than naturally occurring things in our world that have been there for possibly millions of years. It's just a thought.
Just a thought.
Just a thought.
Just a thought.
But anyway, thank you for joining.
You're
it's
welcome.
Always such a like vibrant conversation, and your perspective on things and your questioning on things, while also being in the no, I would say, of a different way of seeing it and doing things.
I always love getting into topics with you and just deep diving. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And thank all of you for joining us once again on the Mind Change podcast. And listen, if this spoke to you in any way and you want to find out more information, read the book or listen to the book. It's a great jumping off point. If after that you want more information, then we have so many different ways of entering into this information. So you can take an online course, you can have one-to-one sessions, you can come to a retreat, you can schedule a private retreat. There's so many ways to dig in to this for yourself. And so just go to www.mindchange.com. A lot of stuff is there, or reach out and comment. And we love your comments. We love your suggestions. So please keep doing that. And leave those 5-star reviews, because they really help us to continue to create the content that you guys are just eating up out there. So thank you. And thanks for joining us on the Mind Change podcast, where we endeavor to change the world one mind at a time.